You may have heard of something called back to school night. In fact, I saw some of you there. With 3 kids, we go to 3 different back to school nights. And I think the point of back to school night is when you get home and ask your children, what do you learn in school? And what do they say? Nothing. That our teachers tell us it's not true. And so you go to back to school night and you expect to get the syllabus, the curriculum, and what your children will learn in school. And as a rabbi and a parent, we serve double duty. So when we come back to school night, often the administrators and the heads of school will say, can you please share a word of Torah? And of course, we prepare something. But this week at back to school night, we didn't get any equations or scientific hypothesis or historical facts. Instead, the head of our lower school explained to the parents the goal of education this year. She explained to us that every child, no matter how gifted we think they are, will fall and make a mistake. And if we know that our children will fall and make a mistake, she said it is the job of our school and our institutions to make sure that when they fall gently. They will physically fall as their bodies change. They will emotionally fall as their minds change, but they will fall. And when I heard our principal tell us the reality of the year ahead, as a rabbi, the only thing I can think of was one of the over 70 mitzvot in this parasha. And the one that I thought most aptly described what she was describing was the mitzvah to build a ma'akeh. In English, it's translated as parapet, but really it means a fence, specifically on a roof when you build a new house. When you build a new house, on your rooftop, you are supposed to put a fence around that piece of property. It's on the rooftop. Somebody asked me this week, why? Because in the ancient Near East, the rooftop was the place of gathering. It's not like the homes here in LA, perhaps on the high rises, but in New York, right? You have the rooftop, and that is where people gather. But for a moment, I want you to think about what is the function of a fence. Because we usually think the function of a fence is to keep the things that we do not want to come inside, keep it out. Whether it's animals, whether it's people, whether it's anything that you don't want inside your property, keep it out. But at the same time, we don't think that a fence also keeps inside what we want to keep here. And that can be, of course, ourselves, but it can be our children, it can be our property, but ultimately, it is the values that we want to keep inside. And that is a very delicate balance to do. Keep the things we want out and keep the things we want in. Our rabbis thought of this well before we did, and so Sefer HaChinuch, which explains the reasons behind the mitzvot, tells us that a fence removes the stumbling blocks from our dwelling places, but it goes further. They said each person not only should build a fence, but every single day of their lives should also think about what danger might be ahead. That's very exhausting to do, and personally, I don't think we want to live our lives like that. And so how can we live in a world where we are always thinking about the danger outside? How do we live in a world where we want the bad outside, we want the good inside, but in reality we know that the bad and the good exist actually in the same places, and it's hard to disentangle them? How do we live in a world where we are guided by the laws of nature? If you felt that 5.0 earthquake the other morning, while also defending ourselves from those laws of nature at the same time? The answer Sefer HaChinuch again gives is that since God created us to be subjected to the laws of nature, then we have the responsibility to protect ourselves. I'll tell you that in a more simple way. The answer is to build a fence. But it is up to us to make sure that the fence height is the appropriate height. Yes, there are people in the Bible like Abraham and Daniel who literally survived these natural acts of fire. But the rabbis tell us not all of us are like them. Average people like me and you, we have dust on our soul. And so we have to build a fence to make sure our souls don't get any dustier. As Rashi, the great Torah commentator, tells us, you cannot pretend that what exists out there doesn't exist. I thought about Rashi's comments thousands of years later as we think about kids going back to school and students going to a college campus. How many times we always do pretend that what exists out there that is not so great really doesn't exist. Because we can't just live in this sanctuary alone. Hear beautiful prayers, sing beautiful songs, hear inspiring words. That's not the purpose of the synagogue. The synagogue, in fact, serves that same purpose of the fence. Keep the things out, but also keep what we love in. This year, Rabbi Guzik and I have been commenting how many people are literally, and I mean literally, running to synagogues. A couple of years ago, we had to beg you to come. This year's, our seats are full. Every single Shabbat. And so we have to find a way that when we walk outside and we know we will fall gently, only knowing that we have built that proper size fence. Now we know it's not foolproof because another commentator, Sforno, tells us that if somebody falls off the roof that you put a fence, it's not your fault. Meaning, we've tried our hardest, and that too is okay. In essence, just like our teachers told us at back to school night, we can build that fence as high as we want, but the children will still fall. It's inevitable. And I thought that message is no more relevant than today, in the midst of the month of Elul, several weeks before Rosh Hashanah. Because all of us have and continue to adjust our spiritual fence to the right height. We are all discovering that we have fallen and we will continue to do. But we also know that when we get to that perfect height of that fence, we can balance both. Think about the student entering the college campus now. If the fence was too high when they were in high school, they don't understand what's out there. They will be incapable, as Bernard Henry Levy just said, of standing up to those detractors. And yet if the fence was too low for them, they wouldn't understand the sacred warmth that we all understand that we are here for today. This week, I had the opportunity and good fortune of attending 2 different brisses, watching an 8-day-old baby enter the covenant of the people of Israel. In fact, one of the grandmothers here, Angela Badahi. And it was the same Moyle, and we often work with him, and before each bris, he said, I've added something new. He says, even though we are cognizant that there is literally a war going on, it is so important to put this child on the chair of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. Because this child we know is entering a world that is falling, but our prayer is that this child will one day usher in the Mashiach to an era of shalom, of peace. For those children, we want the tallest wall fence possible. And yet, as that child inevitably will fall, we will always remember that chair of Kisei Shel Eliyahu Hanavi, the chair of Elijah, that the promise that it is up to us to pick that child up again so that they fall gently next time. The month of Elul is here. We continue to blow that shofar. Our children are back in school, and we are back to work. We are once again learning how to learn. In the next few weeks, let us adjust our fences accordingly so that we will feel protected in the reality of the world, but we will not lose sight of those ideals that we attempt to pursue in the world in which we want to live in this upcoming year. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with our service on page 204.